Please tell me that you are almost here. You said you would never lie to me.
The Korean Mafia boss let me cry alone for 3 years while he chose his mistress. When I walked away, his empire locked him out. I felt his hand before I heard his voice. His fingers closed around the back of my dress at the exact moment I reached the exit. That champagne satin dress I had worn for a dinner he never invited me to, at a restaurant that used to be my workplace, in front of every man who had ever called me to fix what he couldn't. I had not come to fight. I had come because Director Kwon called me at 8:47 that evening and said 4 words in a voice so low I almost didn't hear them. He brought her tonight. I already knew who her was. I had known for 14 months. Her name was Soo Yeon. She had a laugh you could hear from the other side of a room and a way of touching Cha Min-hyuk's arm in public that made it clear she had never once been asked to keep herself a secret. I had been kept a secret for 3 years. My name is Amara Reese. I was 29 years old. I had been the woman Cha Min-hyuk came home to, the woman his men called when they couldn't reach him, the woman who learned his world from the inside out, and I had never once sat at his table in public. Not once. So when I walked into Jade 42 that night and saw Soo Yeon in red at his right hand, with his empire arranged around them like a court, I turned around. I was not going to beg. I was not going to make a scene. I was going to walk out of that restaurant and figure out, finally, how to walk out of his life. I made it 6 steps. His hand caught my dress at the back, twisting the fabric in his fist and pulling me backwards so hard I stumbled, my palm shooting out to catch the edge of the nearest table. A wine glass tilted, red pooled slow across white linen like something being undone. The room went silent. Every table, every conversation, every person who had ever shaken my hand in a hallway when he was not looking and told me, quietly, that they respected me. All of them. Watching. Stop right there. If you are watching this and you have ever been someone's secret while they showed someone else off to the world, stay with me. Drop your city in the comments right now, because what happened next is not what anyone in that room expected. Cha Min-hyuk leaned down close to my ear. His voice was controlled, the voice he used when he needed something to stop without making noise about it. Don't do this here, Amara. Don't do this here. As if I was the one who had done something, I looked up, not at him, at the room. Director Kwon was standing 3 feet from the table, his face unreadable. He was the most senior man in Cha Min-hyuk's organization. 52 years old, ex-military. He had called me at 8:47 to warn me, which meant he had been watching for my arrival, which meant he had known I would come. He was watching me now with an expression I had seen only once before. The night Cha Min-hyuk made a decision that cost them a major alliance, and Director Kwon looked at me across the room like he was calculating something. He was calculating something again. Soo Yeon was still seated, her hand no longer on Cha Min-hyuk's arm. Her eyes on me with an expression I recognized immediately because I had worn it myself for 3 years. She was waiting to see what I would do. So was everyone else. Let me tell you what 3 years with Cha Min-hyuk actually built, because it was not nothing. And you need to understand that before you understand what it cost. I was 26 when he first noticed me. I was carrying a tray through the private dining room at Jade 42 on a Thursday night when one of his men knocked a glass off the table, and I caught it without spilling a drop. Cha Min-hyuk looked up from whatever he was signing. He watched me set the glass back down and straighten without a word. After they left, there was a card under the centerpiece with a number and 2 words. Call me. I should have left it on the table. What followed was 3 years of a life I had to learn to live in pieces. The private dinners in apartments no one knew about. The way he would sit across from me for 2 hours and say almost nothing. and somehow I understood every silence. The nights he came to me at 2 a.m. because his world had moved too fast and he needed somewhere it was still. I was that place. I was where he was soft. I was where he breathed. But I was also the woman who cried alone on her birthday 3 years running because he was at an event with Soo Yeon and could not call. The woman who sat in an empty apartment on New Year's Eve with her phone face up on the table, watching midnight come and go. The woman who learned to read his absence the way other women read love letters, carefully, looking for the meaning underneath. Director Kwon was the first person in his world to treat me like I existed, beyond what I was, to Cha Min-hyuk. 6 months into the relationship, he called me directly for the first time. A deal had gone sideways, and Cha Min-hyuk was unreachable, and 3 men were waiting for a decision. Director Kwon did not apologize for calling. He simply explained the situation and then waited. I told him what to do. He did it. The deal was salvaged. He called again 2 weeks later. Then Mr. Oh, the logistics director. Then the head of 3 separate hotel operations. Slowly, quietly, without anyone officially announcing it, I became the person his empire called when things needed to be handled, and Cha Min-hyuk was occupied with the version of his life that did not include me. I told myself it meant something. I told myself it was only a matter of time before he chose me publicly, before he stopped treating me like a room he retreated to and started treating me like a life he was building. I told myself that for 3 years. His hand was still in my dress. The room was still silent. Amara. His voice had dropped lower. I said, not here. Not here. In 3 years, it was always not here, not now, not yet, not in front of people, not publicly, not at the table, not in the way that would require him to choose between what he showed the world and what he kept hidden in it. I had spent 3 years being not here. I looked at Director Kwon. He held my gaze for exactly 2 seconds, then he looked down at the table. It was the smallest movement, almost nothing. But I had spent 3 years learning to read small movements. He was ashamed, not of me, of this, of what he was watching happen to a woman he had called 16 times in 14 months for decisions that kept his operation running. Something settled in my chest, not anger, not grief, something quieter and more permanent than both. I reached back. I removed Cha Min-hyuk's hand from my dress, 1 finger at a time. I heard someone at the far table draw a sharp breath. I did not look to see who. I picked up my bag from the floor where it had fallen. I adjusted the strap on my shoulder. I looked at Cha Min-hyuk. Really looked at him. The way you look at something you spent 3 years believing in. The way you look at something you are deciding to put down. I'm not angry, I said, quietly, evenly. I just finally understand. I turned and walked to the exit. His hand did not come back. His men did not move. The room did not make a sound. I walked through those doors and I did not look back. Not because I was strong, but because I knew that if I looked back, I would find something worse than indifference in his face. I would find relief, and I was not ready to survive that. The night air outside Jade 42 was cold and sharp. I sat on a bench 2 blocks away because my legs gave out. Not from grief, not yet, but from the weight of finally. I had been carrying not yet for 3 years, and I had just set it down on the floor of his restaurant and walked away from it. My phone lit up before I even caught my breath. Director Kwon. I stared at it for a long time. Then I answered. Ms. Reese, his voice was careful, measured. Are you safe? I'm fine. A pause. What happened tonight was not appropriate. He never wasted words. I want you to know that. I did not know what to say, so I said nothing. There are matters, he continued, that will require your attention in the coming days, if you are willing. Director Kwon, not on his behalf, he said quickly, on behalf of the people who have worked with you for 3 years and know the difference. I hung up, sat there in the cold, called my best friend Mabel, who answered on the first ring and said, Tell me where you are, without asking a single question first. That is what real love sounds like. If you have ever been the invisible person who kept everything running while someone else took the credit, I need you to comment right now, because what I am about to tell you is the part nobody talks about. 3 days after I walked out of Jade 42, Director Kwon called again. He told me that the Meridian deal, a hotel acquisition that had been in negotiation for 7 months, the largest expansion in Cha Min-hyuk's legitimate business portfolio, had stalled. The partner on the other side, a man named Chairman Bay, had asked a question at the table that morning that nobody could answer. The question was, "Where is Ms. Reese?" Chairman Bay had met me twice, both times at Cha Min-hyuk's side at private dinners that were not supposed to be business, but always were. Both times I had said something at the table that moved the conversation forward in a way that hours of formal negotiation had not. Chairman Bay was 71 years old and he trusted very few people. He had decided somewhere in those 2 dinners that I was one of them. He did not know I was only there because Cha Min-hyuk had nowhere else to put me that night. "He's asking to meet with you," Director Kwon said, "separately. That's not my deal to close." "No, but it is your relationship to honor, or not." I did not answer that day. I called Mabel instead and sat on her kitchen floor for 2 hours trying to understand what was happening. By the end of that week, 3 more things had happened. Mr. O, who ran logistics across 6 operations, called to tell me that 2 distribution contacts, men I had spent months building trust with on Cha Min-hyuk's behalf, had stopped returning his calls. They were waiting to know if I was still involved before they committed to the next quarter. The head of security for 2 of the hotel properties called to ask if I would continue consulting on a safety protocol we had designed together the previous spring. He did not ask if Cha Min-hyuk had approved it. He asked if I would, and Director Kwon's assistant, a quiet woman named Ms. Shin, who had never spoken to me directly in 3 years, sent me a message that said only, "He doesn't know how to run the 9 a.m. without you. Nobody does." I had sat in on the 9 a.m. briefing for 2 years, never officially, never with a title, just present, listening, occasionally saying one sentence that redirected a conversation that was going sideways. In my absence, the 9 a.m. had run 40 minutes over for 3 consecutive days and ended without resolution twice. I am not telling you this to make myself sound important. I am telling you this because I want you to understand something I did not fully understand myself until that week. Power does not always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up in a woman who answers the phone when no one else can, who says the right thing in the right room, who builds trust quietly and consistently over years. Not because she was given authority, but because she showed up like she had it. And the people around her started to believe it too. Cha Min-hyuk had spent 3 years treating me like a secret. His empire had spent 3 years treating me like a foundation, and when the foundation walked out, the building started to crack. He called on the 4th day. I was in Mabel's kitchen when my phone lit up with a number I still had not deleted. I stared at it through 2 full rings. Mabel looked at me across the table and said nothing. I answered. Amara. His voice was the same, controlled, even, but underneath it, something I had never heard in 3 years of learning his silences. Strain. I need you to take the Meridian meeting. Not, I am sorry. Not, I handled things badly. Not, I should have chosen you. Just, I need you to take the meeting. No, I said, a pause. Amara, I'm not angry with you, Min-hyuk, and I meant it. The anger had lasted about 45 minutes on that bench outside Jade 42, and then it had turned into something else entirely. Something cleaner and colder and more useful. But I spent 3 years being useful to you in ways you never acknowledged. I don't think I should keep doing that. The deal is worth... I know what the deal is worth, I said. I've known since February. I was in the room when Chairman Bay told you what he needed to move forward. You forgot I was there. Silence. You always forgot I was there, I said. Right up until I wasn't. I did not hang up on him. I waited to see if there was something else coming. Something real. Something that might have changed what happened next, he said. I'll compensate you for your time. I ended the call. Mabel looked at me from across the kitchen. Her eyes were wet. "How are you doing that?" she asked. "How are you that calm?" "Because I've been grieving this for a year," I said. "I just didn't know that's what I was doing." "Stay with me. Because this next part is the reason I'm still telling this story. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been the person who kept everything running for someone who never said your name out loud? Director Kwon came to see me in person on the 7th day. He arrived at Mabel's building without announcement, which did not surprise me. He had spent 30 years operating in a world where you announced nothing. He sat at Mabel's kitchen table with his coat still on and his hands folded in front of him, and he looked at me for a long moment before he spoke. "He is not going to change," he said. "I want you to know that I know that. I know it too. What he did at Jade 42 was not a mistake. It was a pattern." He chose his words with the precision of a man who never wasted them. "You were never supposed to be visible to him. You were supposed to be available. Those are different things." My throat tightened. "What I want to tell you," Director Kwon continued, "is what I should have said 18 months ago." He held my gaze. "You built relationships in that organization that did not belong to him. They belonged to you. The trust those men placed in you, that was earned by you, not transferred, not borrowed, earned." I did not speak. "Chairman Bay will not close the Meridian deal without you at the table. Not because he is making a point, because he is 71 years old and he has spent 50 years learning to identify where the real judgment lives in a room." A pause. He identified it. It was not Cha Min-hyuk. I looked down at my hands. "You have options, Ms. Reese," Director Kwon said. "Real ones, the kind that do not require him." After he left, I sat at Mabel's kitchen table for a long time. Not crying, not planning, just sitting with the weight of what he had said. I had walked into Cha Min-hyuk's world as a waitress carrying a tray on a Thursday night. I had spent 3 years being kept at the edges of it, invisible in public, indispensable in private. I had built something in that world without meaning to, and it was mine. On the 10th day after Jade 42, the Meridian deal moved forward. Not because Cha Min-hyuk found a way to close it, because I called Chairman Bay myself, not on behalf of anyone. In my own name, from my own phone, with my own words. I told him I was no longer representing the interests I had previously been associated with. I told him I was exploring independent work. He told me he had been waiting for me to say that for 8 months. We met 3 days later. Mabel ironed my blazer and told me I looked like someone who had always known exactly who she was. I told her that was not true, and she said, "It is now." Chairman Bay offered me a consulting position by the end of that meeting. Not a favour, a business decision. I am not going to tell you the rest of what happened in clinical terms because this is not a business story. It is a story about what it cost to finally understand my own value. And what happened to a man who never understood it until it was gone. Cha Min-hyuk's empire did not fall. I want to be clear about that because I am not telling you a revenge story. His organization continued. His hotels ran. His operations moved, but the Meridian expansion never happened under his name. 3 of his most trusted long-term partners quietly realigned their relationships over the following months. Not dramatically, not publicly, just the slow, careful way that men in that world shift loyalty when they decide something has changed. Director Kwon retired from his position 6 months later. Mr. O followed a year after that. He was not locked out by locked doors and changed passwords. He was locked out the way people are really locked out of things. Quietly, gradually, by the people who had been holding the doors open choosing to put their hands in their pockets instead. I heard through Mabel, who heard through someone she knew, that he had tried to call Director Kwon on the day the Meridian deal was announced under a different name. Director Kwon did not answer. 6 months after the night at Jade 42, I was sitting in an office with my name on the door. Not a big office, not an empire, a consultancy. 3 clients, 2 employees, 1 desk that I had picked out myself in a store on a Saturday morning while Mabel trailed behind me with coffee, saying that one, no, that one. My mother called from Atlanta when I told her. She asked me how I felt. I told her I felt like the full size of myself for the first time in years. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, "Baby, you were always that size. You just kept standing in his shadow. I want to tell you something I had to learn the hard way. And I mean really learn it, not just say it. Being chosen privately is not being chosen. A man can come to you at 2 in the morning for 3 years. He can know how you take your coffee and remember things you mentioned once and look at you across a room like you are the only real thing in it. And still keep you hidden. Still choose someone else for every public moment. Still let you cry alone on your birthday while he sits at a table he would never put your name beside. That is not love protected by circumstance. That is love ranked. And you were not first. I do not hate Cha Min-hyuk. I want to say that clearly because it is true. The anger I felt lasted one night and then it became something quieter and more instructive. He taught me what I was capable of by accident, by giving me problems to solve that were too big for me on paper and trusting that I would solve them anyway, even while refusing to say my name out loud in a room. He built me without meaning to, and then he let me go without understanding what he was releasing. That is his loss. And I mean that in the most literal sense possible. I chose myself the night I removed his hand from my dress 1 finger at a time and walked out of Jade 42 with my bag on my shoulder and my chin level. I chose myself when I answered Director Kwon's call. When I sat in Mabel's kitchen on the floor. When I called Chairman Bay in my own name. When I walked into a store on a Saturday morning and pointed at a desk and said that one. He had 3 years to choose me. I had 1 night to choose myself, and I did. If you are in a situation where someone loves you in private but cannot find you in public, hear me. That gap is not circumstance. It is a choice they are making every single day, and the longer you wait in that gap, the further you get from the version of yourself that does not need to be chosen by anyone to know her own worth. His empire did not lock him out because they were loyal to me. They locked him out because trust, real trust, the kind you build across hundreds of small moments, across phone calls at odd hours, across decisions made under pressure, that kind of trust follows the person who earned it. He thought he owned the room. He did not understand that I had been quietly filling it for 3 years. I walked out of Jade 42 with nothing but my bag and my name and the quietest, most certain feeling I have ever felt in my life. And everything I needed walked out with me. If this story sat with something you've been carrying, drop a comment and tell me, how long did you wait before you finally chose yourself? I read every single one. And if you want to know what happened when Cha Min-hyuk finally understood what he had let go, subscribe, because that conversation happened, and it changed me in ways I did not expect. Part 2 is coming. Don't miss it. See you in the next one.